Victor Chen was living the dream most musicians only fantasize about. At 34 years old, he had everything. A penthouse overlooking the city skyline, cars that cost more than most people's houses, and a reputation as one of the world's greatest trumpet players. His concerts sold out within minutes. His albums went platinum, and his custom-made golden trumpet worth over $100,000 was as famous as he was. But success had changed Victor in ways he didn't even notice anymore. He'd started believing his own hype. The magazine covers that called him a genius. The fans who screamed his name. The critics who praised every note he played. Somewhere along the way, Victor had forgotten what it felt like to be humble, to be hungry, to struggle for anything. On a Thursday morning in late October, Victor decided to do something unusual. Instead of sending his assistant to pick up equipment, he walked into a small music shop downtown. It was the kind of place he normally wouldn't be caught dead in. No red carpets, no VIP treatment, just dusty shelves packed with instrument cases and faded posters of jazz legends on the walls. The bell above the door chimed as Victor entered. The owner, an elderly man arranging sheet music, glanced up and did a double take. His eyes went wide with recognition, but Victor put a finger to his lips. He wanted to browse in peace, maybe find some vintage mouthpieces for his collection, something authentic from the old days. That's when he heard it. A trumpet sound drifting from somewhere in the back of the shop. But this wasn't just any playing. Someone was pouring their heart out through that instrument. The melody was simple, maybe even a bit rough around the edges, but it had something Victor's playing hadn't had in years. Soul, raw, unfiltered emotion that made you stop and listen. Victor felt a strange mix of curiosity and irritation. Who was this person, and why did their playing bother him so much? He followed the sound to a small practice room at the back. Through the window in the door, he could see a young woman sitting on a metal folding chair. She couldn't have been more than 19 or 20. She wore a worn-out sweatshirt from the local community college and jeans that had seen better days. Her trumpet looked like it had been through a war, dented and scratched, held together with tape in some places. But the way she played. Her eyes were closed. Her whole body swayed gently with the music. She wasn't just playing notes on a page. She was telling a story, sharing something deep and personal with an audience of one, herself. When she finished, Victor pushed the door open and started clapping, slowly, deliberately. The kind of applause that sounds more like mockery than praise. The girl's eyes flew open. She jumped a little, startled, and nearly dropped her trumpet. Then she saw who was standing in the doorway. Her mouth fell open. "Not bad," Victor said, leaning against the doorframe with a smirk. "For someone who's probably been playing, what, a year? 2 years? 3 years, the girl said quietly, setting her trumpet carefully on her lap. Her name was Luna Park, though Victor didn't bother asking. She recognized him immediately. How could she not? His face was on billboards all over the city, advertising his upcoming concert at the Symphony Hall. 3 years, Victor repeated, nodding as if this confirmed something. That explains it. You've got some natural feeling, I'll give you that. But technique, theory? The fundamentals that separate amateurs from professionals? That takes decades to master. Luna felt her cheeks burn. She wanted to say something back, but what could she say? He was Victor Chen, she was nobody. Just a girl who worked at a diner during the day and stocked shelves at a grocery store at night, trying to scrape together enough money for community college music classes. The shop owner had appeared behind Victor now, looking nervous and excited at the same time. "Mr. Chen, it's such an honor to have you here. Is there anything I can help you find?" But Victor wasn't paying attention. He was still staring at Luna, his mind working. He could feel it again, that irritation. This girl with her cheap trumpet and her 3 years of experience had made him feel something when she played. Something he hadn't felt in his own music for a long time. And that made him want to prove something. To himself maybe, or to her, or to everyone. "Tell you what," Victor said suddenly, that famous smile spreading across his face. The smile that had been on magazine covers. "How about we make this interesting? You and me. A friendly little competition. 1 week from today, right here in this shop." The owner's eyes went wide. "A competition? Here? Why not?" Victor said, pulling out his phone. "We'll each play a few pieces. Show everyone what real talent looks like." He glanced at Luna. "Unless you're too scared to play in front of people." Luna's hands tightened around her trumpet. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. Every logical part of her brain was screaming to say no. This was Victor Chen, a man who'd been playing since he was 5 years old, who'd studied at the most prestigious music schools in the world, who'd played for presidents and royalty. But there was something else rising inside her, a tiny spark of anger at his arrogance, at the way he looked at her like she was nothing. Like her 3 years of sacrifice and struggle and bleeding fingers didn't matter because she didn't have a fancy degree or a golden trumpet. She thought about her father, about how he'd worked double shifts at the factory for 3 years to save enough money to buy her that dented trumpet, about how he'd died 2 months after giving it to her, never getting to see her play it, about the promise she'd made at his bedside that she wouldn't waste the gift he'd given her. "Okay," Luna heard herself say. Her voice was quiet but steady. "I accept." Victor's smile widened. "Excellent, 1 week. Right here." He turned to the shop owner. "You're okay with hosting this?" The owner nodded so fast his glasses nearly fell off. "Absolutely, yes." "This is incredible." Victor pulled out a business card and handed it to the owner. "Have your people contact my people. We'll make sure this gets the attention it deserves." Then he looked back at Luna one more time. "See you in a week, kid. Try not to be too nervous." He walked out, already pulling out his phone to call his publicist. This was perfect. A feel-good story. The famous musician giving an unknown talent a chance to shine. His followers would eat it up. Maybe he'd even go easy on her, make it look close. Let her save face. Behind him, Luna sat frozen in the practice room. The shop owner was dancing around excitedly, already imagining the crowds this would bring. But Luna couldn't move. She stared at her reflection in the window. What had she just agreed to? Her phone buzzed. A text from her manager at the diner, asking if she could cover an extra shift tomorrow. She needed the money. She always needed the money. But something told her she was going to need something else more this week. Time and a miracle. She picked up her trumpet again. Her fingers found the valves, worn smooth from countless hours of practice. She took a breath and started playing. The same melody as before, but this time there was something different in it. Determination. The video went viral before Luna even made it home that night. Someone in the music shop had recorded the whole exchange on their phone. By the time she walked through the door of her tiny studio apartment, her phone was exploding with notifications. The video had been shared thousands of times. The comments section was a battlefield. Some people were excited. "This is going to be amazing! David versus Goliath!" "I'm rooting for the underdog." Others were brutal. "She's going to get destroyed. Why would she embarrass herself like this? Victor's going to wipe the floor with her." Luna turned off her phone and stared at the ceiling. What had she done? Meanwhile, across town in his penthouse, Victor was having the time of his life. His publicist was thrilled. His social media manager was posting behind-the-scenes content. His agent was already talking about turning this into a documentary. The story was perfect. Famous musician discovers unknown talent, gives her a chance to shine. Everyone wins. Victor scrolled through the comments on his own post, smiling at the support. He'd framed it as a mentorship opportunity, a chance to inspire young musicians. He looked good, generous, down to earth. Exactly the image he wanted. He picked up his golden trumpet and played a few scales. Easy, effortless. He'd been doing this since he was 5 years old. 1 week of prep? He barely needed 1 day. Maybe he'd practice a couple hours just to stay sharp. But this wasn't really a competition. It was a performance, theater, and he was the star, his manager called. "Victor, the music shop is too small. We've had over 3,000 requests for tickets. We need to move this to a bigger venue." "How big?" Victor asked, only half paying attention. "The Riverside Theater. Holds 500 people, and we're thinking we could charge admission, donate the proceeds to music education. Makes you look even better." Victor grinned. "Do it and make sure there's good lighting. I want the cameras to catch everything." He hung up and went back to scrolling. He didn't notice the few comments that said things like, "I hope she surprises him," or "Sometimes the underdog wins." Those comments didn't matter. This was his show. Luna's week looked very different. She woke up at 5 the next morning, hands shaking as she made coffee. She'd barely slept. Her mind kept replaying Victor's smirk, his casual confidence, the way he'd looked at her like she was a child playing dress-up. At 6, she was knocking on the door of the community center. Mr. Kozlov answered, still in his bathrobe. He was 73 years old, a retired symphony musician who taught free music lessons to anyone who asked. He'd been Luna's teacher for all 3 years she'd been playing. "Luna, what are you doing here so early?" "I need your help," she said, and her voice cracked. "I did something stupid." She told him everything: the music shop, Victor Chen, the challenge, the viral video. Mr. Kozlov listened without interrupting, his weathered face unreadable. When she finished, she waited for him to tell her she should cancel, that she was in over her head, that she should apologize and back out while she still could. Instead, he said, "Get your trumpet. We have work to do." For the next 7 days, Luna lived and breathed music in a way she never had before. She called in sick to both her jobs, losing money she desperately needed for rent. But Mr. Kozlov was relentless. They practiced 6 hours a day, sometimes more. Her lips cracked and bled from the constant pressure of the mouthpiece. Her fingers ached from the repetitive scales. Her back hurt from sitting in the same position for hours. There were moments, usually around hour 5 of practice, when she wanted to quit, when she wanted to throw her trumpet across the room and cry. But every time she thought about giving up, Mr. Kozlov would stop her. "Why did you accept his challenge?" he asked on the 3rd day, after she'd messed up the same passage for the 20th time. Luna wiped her eyes. "I don't know. I was angry, I guess." "No," Mr. Kozlov said firmly. "Anger fades. There's something deeper. Why do you play the trumpet?" Luna was quiet for a long moment. Then she told him about her father, about the factory job, about the 3 years of saving, about the promise she'd made. Mr. Kozlov nodded slowly. "That's why you'll win." "Win? Have you seen Victor Chen play? He's perfect. Every note, every phrase, everything is flawless." "Exactly," Mr. Kozlov said. "He's perfect. But music isn't about perfection, Luna. It's about truth. It's about making people feel something real. Victor Chen plays notes. You play stories. That's the difference." Luna wasn't sure she believed him, but she kept practicing. The news coverage grew. A local TV station did a segment calling it the duel of the century. A morning show interviewed Victor via video call. He was charming, humble, talked about how important it was to encourage young talent. He made it sound like he was doing Luna a favor. The reporter asked, "Are you worried at all?" "Underdog stories do happen." Victor laughed. "I'm not worried. I'm excited. This is about celebrating music, not about winning or losing." But alone in his penthouse later that night, Victor watched the video of Luna playing in the music shop again. He'd watched it a dozen times now, always telling himself he was just studying his competition, but something about it bothered him. That emotion in her playing, that raw, unfiltered feeling. When had he last played like that? He shook off the thought. Emotion was fine, but it didn't win competitions. Technique did. Precision did. Years of training did. And he had all of that. By day 6, Luna could barely hold her trumpet. Her lips were so swollen she had to ice them between practice sessions. Mr. Kozlov finally made her stop early. "You need to rest tomorrow," he said. "Your body needs recovery time. But the duel is the day after tomorrow. I need more practice." "No. You need to trust yourself." He put a hand on her shoulder. "Luna, you've worked harder this week than most people work in a year. You're ready. Now you need to let your body heal so you can play your best." That night Luna couldn't sleep again. But this time it wasn't from fear. It was from something else. Anticipation, maybe, or determination. She thought about everything Mr. Kozlov had taught her. About playing from the heart. About truth in music. She picked up her phone and scrolled through the comments on the viral video one more time. Most of them still said she'd lose. That Victor was too good. That she was crazy for trying. But there were other comments too. From people who said they believed in her. From people who said they'd be rooting for her. From a woman who wrote, "My daughter plays trumpet. You've already inspired her just by being brave enough to try." Luna turned off her phone and looked at her trumpet, sitting on the desk. Battered, taped, Far from perfect. But it was hers. And in 2 days she'd play it in front of 500 people. Win or lose, she was going to play the truth. Her truth. Across town, Victor set his alarm and went to bed early. Tomorrow he'd do a light practice session, maybe an hour or two. Pick out his outfit, review his set list one more time. This was just another performance. Just another show. He fell asleep easily, the way he always did. Confident, comfortable, certain. Neither of them knew that in less than 48 hours, everything would change. The Riverside Theater was packed an hour before the duel even started. 500 seats filled with people from every walk of life. Wealthy music enthusiasts in designer clothes sat next to college students who'd pooled their money for tickets. News cameras lined the back wall. Local reporters whispered into microphones. The energy in the room was electric. Luna stood backstage, trying to control her breathing. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She could hear the crowd through the curtain, their voices rising and falling like ocean waves. Mr. Kozlov stood beside her, calm as ever. "Remember," he said quietly, "they're not here to watch you fail. They're here to listen to music. That's all you need to think about. The music." Luna nodded, but she couldn't speak. Her throat felt tight. She'd thrown up twice already in the bathroom. Her lips, still tender from the week of intense practice, throbbed with each heartbeat. Outside, a black limousine pulled up to the theater entrance. Victor stepped out, wearing a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than Luna's rent for a year. Camera flashes exploded. Fans screamed his name. He waved and smiled, every movement practiced and perfect. This was his element. The spotlight, the attention, the worship. He walked into the theater like he owned it, his golden trumpet case gleaming under the lights. His manager whispered last-minute details in his ear, but Victor barely listened. He'd done this 1,000 times. Another stage, another audience, another easy victory. Backstage, he finally saw Luna. She was sitting in a metal folding chair, her old trumpet in her lap, staring at the floor. She looked small, young, terrified. Victor felt a brief flash of something. Sympathy, maybe? Or was it guilt? He pushed the feeling away and walked over. "Hey, you ready for this?" Luna looked up. Her eyes were red. "I think so." "Listen," Victor said, and for a moment his famous smile slipped. "Don't be too nervous, just do your best, that's all anyone can ask." He meant it to sound encouraging, but to Luna it sounded like pity, like he'd already decided she'd lose and was trying to make her feel better about it. She stood up, holding her trumpet a little tighter. "I'll do more than my best," she said quietly. Something in her voice made Victor pause, but then the stage manager was calling them. It was time. The lights dimmed. The crowd fell silent. A spotlight hit the center of the stage as the theater director walked out to explain the rules. 3 rounds. First round, a classical piece. Second round, a jazz standard. Third round, an original composition. 3 judges, all music professors from local universities, would score based on technique, interpretation, and emotional impact. "Ladies and gentlemen," the director announced, "let's welcome our performers. First, a man who needs no introduction, winner of multiple awards, seller of millions of albums, please welcome Victor Chen." The applause was deafening. Half the audience jumped to their feet. Victor walked onto the stage with the confidence of someone who'd done this 1,000,000 times. He waved, soaking in the adoration. This was what he lived for. And his opponent tonight, a student from our local community college, Luna Park. The applause was different for Luna, warmer, more hopeful. People weren't cheering for accomplishments or fame. They were cheering for possibility. For the underdog. Luna walked onto the stage, her legs feeling like they might give out any second. The lights were so bright she could barely see the audience. But she could feel them. Hundreds of eyes watching. Waiting. Judging. Victor would go first. He'd insisted on it, and Luna had been relieved. At least she'd have time to calm her nerves while he played. Victor lifted his golden trumpet. The theater fell silent. Then he began to play Haydn's Trumpet Concerto, one of the most technically demanding classical pieces ever written. And he played it flawlessly. Every note was crisp and clear. Every trill was perfect. The high notes rang out like bells. His fingers moved so fast they were almost a blur. It was magnificent, impressive, intimidating. When he finished, the audience erupted. People whistled and cheered. One of the judges was nodding with clear approval. Victor bowed deeply, that famous smile back on his face. He glanced at Luna as he walked off stage. The look said it all. Beat that, Luna's turn. She walked to center stage, her old trumpet suddenly feeling heavier than ever. She could see Mr. Kozlov in the third row, his face calm and encouraging. Next to him sat an empty seat, the one she'd reserved in her mind for her father, even though he'd never sit in it. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and began to play. Her piece was simpler. Bach's air on the G string, adapted for trumpet. It didn't have the flashy runs or impossible high notes of Victor's performance. But something else happened when Luna played. The notes seemed to hang in the air, each one mattering. Each one meaning something. There were imperfections. A slight waver on a long note. A breath that came a fraction too late. Victor noticed every mistake, cataloging them mentally. But something strange was happening in the audience. People were leaning forward. The chatter and whispers had stopped completely. Even the judges looked mesmerized. Luna played like she was telling a story, like she was sharing something precious and fragile. The music wasn't showing off. It wasn't demanding attention. It was inviting people in, asking them to feel something real. When she finished, there was a moment of complete silence. Just a heartbeat. Then the applause came, building slowly but steadily. People weren't cheering. They were clapping with a kind of reverence, like they'd just witnessed something sacred. Victor frowned slightly. That wasn't the reaction he'd expected. Round 2. Jazz standards. Victor chose Take 5, a Dave Brubeck classic. He played it at lightning speed, adding his own complex improvisations. His fingers flew across the valves. The rhythm was intricate, almost mathematical in its precision. It was a masterclass in technical skill. Show-off music at its finest. The audience loved it. Of course they did. It was impressive. Undeniable. Even people who didn't know much about music could appreciate the sheer difficulty of what he was doing. Luna's turn again. She chose What a Wonderful World, the Louis Armstrong classic that everyone knew. Some people in the audience actually groaned when she announced it. Too simple, too obvious, too safe. But then she started playing and the groans stopped. Luna played it slowly, tenderly, like she meant every single note. She wasn't trying to prove anything or show off any skills. She was just sharing the beauty of the song, the hope in it, the gratitude for small, perfect moments in an imperfect world. A woman in the third row started crying. Then another. Even some of the men in the audience found themselves blinking back tears. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't complicated. But it was honest in a way that made people remember why they loved music in the first place. When Luna finished, the applause was different than it had been for Victor. It wasn't as loud, but it lasted longer. It felt more genuine somehow. More moved. The judges conferred quietly. After a long discussion, they announced the scores. Round 1, Victor ahead by 2 points. Round 2, tied. Everything would come down to the third round. The original composition stopped backstage during the intermission. Victor paced. He should have been further ahead. That second round should have been his. What was happening? Why were people reacting to her simple playing more than his technical mastery? His manager tried to reassure him. You've got this. Your original composition is incredible. Just play it like you always do. But Victor's hands were sweating for the first time in years. He kept replaying Luna's performances in his mind. She wasn't better than him. She wasn't. But something about her playing was getting to people, getting to the judges, getting to him. Luna sat alone in her dressing room, staring at her trumpet. One more round, one more chance. Mr. Kozlov knocked softly and came in. How are you feeling? Scared, Luna admitted. His original composition is going to be amazing. I've heard him play before. He's going to do something incredible and I'm going to look like an amateur. Maybe, Mr. Kozlov said, or maybe you'll do what you've been doing all night. You'll play the truth. And the truth always wins in the end. Luna wasn't sure she believed that, but she picked up her trumpet anyway. The final round was about to begin. The lights came back up after intermission. The theater felt different now. The air was thick with anticipation.
People stopped whispering.
They stopped checking their phones. Everyone knew this final round would decide everything. Victor walked onto the stage first. His suit was still perfect. His hair was still in place. But if you looked closely, really closely, you could see a thin line of sweat on his forehead. His jaw was clenched just a bit tighter than usual. He raised his golden trumpet and looked out at the audience. "My original composition is called Apex," he announced. "It represents reaching the highest point. The peak of achievement. The moment when everything comes together." Of course it did. That was so perfectly Victor. Always climbing. Always winning. Always at the top. He began to play, and within seconds the audience knew they were witnessing something extraordinary. The piece was a technical marvel. Notes flew by so fast they seemed impossible. High notes that would make most trumpet players' lips bleed. Complex rhythms that shifted and changed like a mathematical puzzle. Harmonies that shouldn't work but somehow did. Victor played like a machine. Like someone who'd spent 30 years perfecting every aspect of his craft. His fingers never missed. His breath control was superhuman. The piece built and built, climbing higher and higher until it reached a final note so high and so pure that it seemed to pierce the ceiling itself. The audience exploded. People jumped to their feet. The applause was thunderous. Victor stood there, breathing hard, soaking it in. This was it. This was perfection. How could anyone follow that? He looked at the judges. 2 of them were applauding enthusiastically. The third, an older woman with silver hair, was writing notes with a thoughtful expression. Victor felt a small flicker of doubt but pushed it away. He'd just played the performance of his life. There was no way Luna could match it. As he walked off stage, he passed Luna in the wings. She looked pale, terrified. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her trumpet. For a moment, Victor almost felt sorry for her. She'd played well, better than he'd expected. But this was over. He'd won. "Good luck," he said, and this time he really meant it. She'd need more than luck after that performance. She'd need a miracle. Luna walked onto the stage like she was walking to her own execution. The applause for Victor was still echoing. People were still buzzing about what they'd just heard. She could feel their skepticism. After what Victor just did, what could she possibly offer? She reached center stage and stopped. The spotlight was hot on her face. She could see Mr. Kozlov in the audience, his eyes steady and calm. Next to him, that empty seat. Her father's seat. Luna closed her eyes. Her heart was pounding so hard she thought everyone in the theater could probably hear it. Her lips hurt. Her arms ached. She'd spent every penny she had on this week. Lost work she desperately needed. Pushed herself further than she thought possible, and for what? To be humiliated in front of 500 people? To prove that Victor was right all along, that she was just a girl with a cheap trumpet and big dreams? Then she thought about her father, about the last conversation they'd had in that hospital room. His voice weak but steady. "Don't play music to impress people, Luna. Play it to say what words can't say. Play it to make people feel less alone." Luna opened her eyes. She raised her battered trumpet to her lips. "This piece is called Father's Song," she said softly. Some people in the back probably couldn't even hear her. She began to play. The melody started gentle, simple, almost childlike. It was the lullaby her father used to hum when she was little, before the factory shifts wore him down, before life got hard and complicated, when things were simple and safe and full of possibility. The audience settled into their seats, expecting something sweet but forgettable after Victor's fireworks. But then something happened. The melody changed. It grew. It swelled with pride and joy. The moment when her father first heard her play the trumpet he'd saved 3 years to buy. The moment he knew his sacrifice had meant something, that his daughter had a gift. Luna's eyes were closed again. She wasn't playing for the judges anymore. She wasn't playing for the audience. She wasn't even playing for herself. She was playing for her father, and the trumpet became her voice, saying all the things she never got to tell him. The music shifted again. It became strained, painful. The notes cracked slightly, not from lack of skill, but from raw emotion. This was the sickness, the hospital visits, the fear of losing him, the way he kept apologizing for being sick, as if dying was something he was doing to her instead of something happening to him. People in the audience stopped moving, stopped breathing. Some of them were gripping their seats. Others were wiping their eyes. This wasn't just music anymore. This was grief. Real, honest, human grief that everyone understood because everyone had lost someone they loved. Victor stood in the wings, frozen. He'd been preparing to celebrate his victory, but now he couldn't move. Couldn't look away. Luna's playing was technically imperfect. He could hear every flaw. But it didn't matter. None of it mattered. She was ripping her heart out and showing it to everyone, and it was the most courageous thing he'd ever seen. The melody climbed one final time. It became soaring, hopeful, bittersweet. This was the promise Luna had made at her father's bedside. The vow to keep playing, to keep trying, to not waste the gift he'd given her. The notes hung in the air like prayers. Luna played the final phrase and tears were streaming down her face. She didn't try to hide them, didn't wipe them away. The last note faded slowly, dissolving into silence. The theater was completely still. Not a cough, not a whisper, not a sound. Luna lowered her trumpet, her whole body shaking. Then someone stood up. One person. Then another. Then another. Within seconds, the entire audience was on their feet. But this wasn't the explosive applause Victor had received. This was different. People were crying openly. Some were hugging each other. The applause was steady, almost reverent, like they were thanking her for something precious she'd given them. Luna stood there, stunned. She couldn't process what was happening. Mr. Kozlov was on his feet, tears running down his weathered face. Even the camera operators were wiping their eyes. One of the judges, the older woman with silver hair, wasn't even pretending to write notes anymore. She was just staring at Luna with a look of profound respect. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. People didn't want it to end. They weren't applauding skill or technique or years of training. They were applauding honesty, vulnerability, the courage it takes to stand in front of strangers and show them your broken heart. Victor stood in the wings, still frozen. His golden trumpet felt heavy in his hands, heavier than it had ever felt before. He looked at it, this instrument that cost more than most people made in a year, and felt something crack inside his chest. For the first time in 30 years, Victor Chen understood the difference between playing music and being music. Luna hadn't just performed notes on a page. She'd transformed her pain into something beautiful and shared it with everyone in that room. She'd made 500 strangers feel less alone. And Victor realized, with a sick feeling in his stomach, that he couldn't remember the last time his music had made anyone feel anything real. The judges conferred. The audience finally settled back into their seats, still sniffling and wiping eyes. Luna walked off stage in a daze, barely aware of her own footsteps. Mr. Kozlov met her in the wings and pulled her into a tight hug. He didn't say anything. He didn't need to. The head judge approached the microphone. The theater fell silent again. Victor and Luna stood on opposite sides of the stage, waiting. Victor's hands were clenched into fists. Luna just looked tired, emptied out, like she'd given everything she had and had nothing left. This has been one of the most remarkable musical events I've ever witnessed, the judge began. Both performers demonstrated extraordinary talent. Victor held his breath. However, music is more than technical skill. It's about connection, communication, the ability to make people feel something true. And on that measure, we have a unanimous decision. The judge paused. The silence was unbearable. The winner is Luna Park. The words hung in the air. The winner is Luna Park. Luna couldn't move, couldn't breathe. She stared at the judge like the woman was speaking a foreign language. Win? She'd won? That wasn't possible. That couldn't be real. The audience erupted again. People were cheering and crying at the same time. Mr. Kozlov was laughing through his tears, clapping so hard his hands had to hurt. Camera flashes were going off like lightning. Reporters were already shouting questions, but Luna just stood there frozen, her old trumpet hanging at her side. She felt empty, hollowed out, like she'd poured everything she had into that last performance and there was nothing left inside her. Then something unexpected happened. Something that would be replayed millions of times online in the days to come. Victor Chen started clapping, slowly at first, then louder. Then he was walking across the stage toward Luna, and the entire theater fell silent, watching. Everyone expected bitterness, excuses, maybe anger. That's what usually happens when someone loses who's not used to losing. But Victor's face wasn't angry. It was something else, something softer, almost grateful. He stopped in front of Luna and extended his hand. She stared at it for a moment, confused, before shaking it. "You just taught me something I should have learned a long time ago," Victor said, his voice loud enough for the microphones to catch. "I've been playing the trumpet for 30 years. But tonight you showed me what music actually is. Thank you." Luna's eyes filled with tears again. "You're an amazing musician," she whispered. "No," Victor said, shaking his head. "I'm an amazing technician. There's a difference. You're a musician. There's a huge difference." The audience didn't know whether to applaud or stay silent. This wasn't how these things usually went. This wasn't the script. But it was real, and everyone watching knew it. Victor looked out at the crowd, at the judges, at the cameras. "I came here tonight thinking I was going to teach this young woman a lesson. But she's the one who taught me. She reminded me why any of us pick up an instrument in the first place. Not to show off, not to win, but to say something true." He turned back to Luna. "You deserved this win. Completely. And I'm genuinely honored that I got to share the stage with you." Then he did something even more surprising. He bowed to her. Not the casual bow he gave audiences, a real bow. The kind you give to someone you respect. The theater went crazy. This moment, this genuine display of humility from one of the world's most famous musicians, was everything people didn't know they needed to see. It went viral within hours. By morning, the video had been viewed tens of millions of times. But the real story was just beginning. Victor went home that night and couldn't sleep. He kept replaying Luna's performance in his mind. That raw emotion, that honesty. When had he lost that? When had music become about perfection instead of connection? He looked at his wall of awards, his platinum albums, his magazine covers, all proof of his success. But what had he actually said with his music? Who had he made feel less alone? The next morning, Victor did something he hadn't done in years. He called his mother, just to talk, not about business or concerts or interviews, just to say he loved her and he was sorry he'd been so busy. She cried on the phone, and so did he. Then he called Luna. She almost didn't answer when she saw his name on her screen. When she did pick up, her voice was cautious. "Hello? Luna, it's Victor. I know this is strange, but I have a question. Would you and Mr. Kozlov be willing to give me lessons?" Silence on the other end. "Not trumpet lessons," Victor continued quickly. "I know how to play the trumpet. I need to learn what you know. How to play with heart. How to make music mean something. I'll pay whatever you want." "We don't want your money," Luna said quietly. "But yes, we'll help you." Over the next 3 months, Victor Chen disappeared from public view. His publicist told reporters he was taking a sabbatical. His agent canceled a European tour worth millions. His fans worried he was having a breakdown, but Victor wasn't breaking down. He was rebuilding. He showed up at the community center 3 times a week, sitting in the same practice room where Luna had been that first day. Mr. Kozlov taught him to play slowly, to feel each note instead of rushing through them, to think about what he was trying to say instead of what he was trying to prove. It was harder than anything Victor had ever done. Harder than any competition or concert, because it meant admitting he'd been doing it wrong for years. It meant being vulnerable. It meant being bad at something for the first time since he was 5 years old. But slowly something shifted. His playing changed. It became less perfect but more honest, less impressive but more moving. He started writing new music, and it sounded nothing like his old work. It was simpler, quieter, real. Luna, meanwhile, was dealing with her own whirlwind. Scholarship offers poured in from music schools across the country. Interview requests came daily. Her social media followers went from a few hundred to over 1 million in a week. Everyone wanted a piece of the girl who'd beaten Victor Chen. But Luna stayed grounded. She kept working at the diner, though now her co-workers treated her like a celebrity. She kept taking lessons from Mr. Kozlov. She kept playing that same dented trumpet her father had bought her, even though companies offered to give her expensive new ones for free. "This trumpet has my father's love in it," she told one reporter. "I don't need a better one." 4 months after the duel, Victor made an announcement that shocked the music world. He was creating a scholarship fund in his parents' names. 50 full-ride music scholarships every year for students who couldn't afford music school. Luna was the first recipient, along with a new professional trumpet, though she kept her old one too. But Victor didn't stop there. He canceled his next stadium tour and organized something completely different, a series of small concerts at community centers, playing alongside local musicians and students. No fancy staging, no expensive tickets, just music, real music, the kind that meant something. His record label thought he was crazy. His agent begged him to reconsider. But Victor had never been more certain of anything in his life. His next album, called Rediscovered, featured collaborations with street performers, students, and amateur musicians he'd met during his community center tour. It was raw, imperfect, beautiful. The critics called it his best work. It won a Grammy, but more importantly, it made people feel something. Victor got letters from fans saying they'd cried listening to it, that it had helped them through hard times, that it made them feel understood. That meant more to him than any award ever had. Luna went on to study at one of the country's best music schools. But every summer she came home to teach free workshops at the community center where Mr. Kozlov had taught her. She never forgot where she came from, never forgot that music wasn't about being the best. It was about being honest. 5 years after the duel, Luna became the youngest principal trumpet player in the Chicago Symphony Orchestra's history. Victor attended her first performance, sitting in the audience with Mr. Kozlov. When Luna played her solo, Victor found himself crying. Not from sadness, from joy, from gratitude. After the performance, they met backstage. Luna's fancy new orchestra trumpet was beautiful, but Victor noticed she still had her old one in its case. "I practice with that one every morning," Luna said, following his gaze. "It reminds me why I play." "Smart," Victor said. "I should probably do the same." They talked for a while about music and life and everything that had changed. Before he left, Victor said something he'd wanted to say for 5 years. "That night at the duel, I thought you beat me. But the truth is you saved me. I was so lost and I didn't even know it. You reminded me what matters. So thank you. For being brave enough to play from your heart. For showing me it was okay to be human instead of perfect." Luna smiled. "You know what's funny? I thought I lost that night. Even after they announced I won, part of me felt like a fraud. Like I'd gotten lucky. But Mr. Kozlov told me something that stuck with me. He said the real victory wasn't beating you. It was having the courage to be vulnerable in front of 500 people. To risk looking stupid for the chance to say something true. He's a wise man," Victor said. "The wisest," Luna agreed. They parted ways that night, two musicians who'd both won and lost that day 5 years ago. But more importantly, two people who'd learned that the best victories aren't about defeating someone else. They're about becoming who you're meant to be. Victor still plays sold-out concerts. Luna still performs with the symphony. But they both play differently now. With more heart, more truth, more humanity. And their music touches people in ways technical perfection never could. Because in the end, that's what music is supposed to do. Not impress people. Not prove you're better than someone else. But connect. Heal. Remind us all that we're human together. And that's a lesson worth learning. Even if it takes a dented trumpet and a simple girl to teach it.